So, I don't know about all of you, but I suffer from an illness to know everything I possibly can, to learn as much as I can. And in today's digital deluge of distraction, it can be really, really overwhelming to try to absorb all the information that flies at us in various formats, right? Because there's everything from podcasts to Audible to regular books to programs that are online. Like one of my favorites is Mentor Box, or even groups like the one that Sarah introduced me to, the 30 Days of Excellence. There's just a lot of different ways to absorb information, and that can feel very, very overwhelming. So what I wanted to walk you through here today is three steps that I've developed that have helped me become kind of a super learner in the age of the digital delusion of distraction. Okay. And so the first one, really, I kind of ripped off this concept from James Clear, who wrote one of my favorite books titled Atomic Habits. Now, this is one thing that James talked about, which is how to design your environment for success. And he said, by changing your surroundings, you can place a hurdle in the way of bad behaviors and remove the barriers to good ones. I like to refer to this strategy as environment design. So when I heard that, what ultimately helped me come up with my first kind of layer of how to become a super learner is I only learn in certain formats and certain environments. So for example, I like to get up every morning and go on about a 45-minute walk. So if I'm on a walk or a bike ride, the only thing I listen to are Audible books. That's it. No podcasts, nothing else, just Audible books. If I'm in my car or I'm in the kitchen at my house, like, we get done with dinner and the kids are going off playing, my wife isn't home, whatever, the only thing I listen to in my car or my kitchen are podcasts. That's it. And then every day, my goal is to read. Right now, it's a commitment. And yes, I'm too old to run, Jason. That's what it is. But my commitment every day in the 75 hard is to read 10 pages of a good book every day. And so whatever formats you are learning in, the thing that I would hope, or that I would encourage you to do if you're challenged by the same thing that I am, is just set it up where you only absorb certain types or formats in certain environments. And I've got to tell you, I've been doing this for like a month now. I've read 2 physical books, I've listened to 3 Audible books, and I've completed 3 podcast episodes in that time, and have been able to really disseminate a lot of it. Like, have downloaded, it feels like the last month has been some of the greatest learning of my entire life or career. So that's just one section of this, is that environment design, using that as a way to focus and get more of the information downloaded into your brain. Now, the second thing that I wanted to show you is the way that I actually read books, because one of the problems that we run into is that we read books, but then we don't really have a way to apply the book. And so one of the books that I believe should be mandatory reading for anyone that's in business, or whether you're the leader or you're somebody who's just in the business, an entrepreneur, is this one right here, The Road Less Stupid. Now, this book is by Keith Cunningham. This is an amazing, like I said, everybody should read this. But when I read a book, the first thing before I read it is, if somebody recommends a book to me, I don't just go buy it. What I'll do is I'll take the author's name, search it on Google, and I'll look for a 15 to 20-minute clip, the most recent one possible, of the author. And what I'm looking for is I want to hear their kind of TED Talk version of the book. And if I listen to that and I hear something that's going to be really helpful to me, to my clients, or help me solve a problem, then that's kind of the litmus test as to whether or not I'm going to read it. So that's where I start, is there something out there that I can listen to that the author recently did? Now with Keith, it was the interview that he did with Jeff Woods on the One Thing podcast. And I found that to be very insightful, particularly because it was leading through crisis. That was right when the pandemic was starting to hit. And so that was what made me read the book. Now, the second thing is that once you've listened to that video or watched that video, is which format or am I going to read this book in? Is it going to be a physical book or is it going to be a Kindle, right? Now, regardless of physical or Kindle, I always get the Audible. And while I'm reading, I'm listening to it. And what that does is it keeps you from having to hard focus. So when you're reading that book and you're listening to it, you don't have to focus on every word. You can kind of relax your eyes and you will move through it much quicker. It's helpful to have like some form of headphones on though, because you can pause it while you're highlighting, okay? Now, the highlights are really, really important. If it is an Audible or a Kindle version, then all of your highlights can be found on this site right here. So if you go to read.amazon.com/notebook, all of the highlights from your Kindle can be found there. And so what we do is after that's already done, after I've read the book, then what happens is we put it into a Google Doc like this. And so every book I read goes into this, and these are all the highlights from the book. Now, what's cool about this, like for example, one of my favorite things in regards to The Road Less Stupid is this perspective he offers. And I can always find it by hitting Control or Command F, and I type in village. And so here's the quote: if the world were a village of 1,000 people, 350 are malnourished, 330 lived in a shanty town with no running water or sewage disposal, 250 are illiterate, they can't read or write at the first grade level, the median income is $3.30 per day, 10 make more than $34,000 a year, which is the top 1%. We feel we don't measure up because we make the fatal mistake of only measuring up without the perspective of looking around to see where we actually fit in the grand scheme of things. So what this does is I'm able to come in here and quickly find whatever it is that I'm looking for from the highlights of the book. It makes the highlights searchable. Another thing that I'll do once the book is already in here is I'll typically go through and start the process of bolding out things. So I'll come in here and bold out the stuff that's really helpful. If I need to refer back to this, it allows me to quickly find it. So this is how we handle highlights if it's a Kindle style book. Now, for some of you, you might be going, well, I don't like the Kindle. And personally, I don't read much on the Kindle anymore either. I don't need any more screen time. And so a lot of the times I've gone back to physical books. So what I do with the highlights on those, and this is an example of a book I did recently, The Power of Full Engagement. There is a software called Otter, O-T-T-E-R. And Otter is a transcription software. So after I read the book, I will go through, turn Otter on, and it's just recording me, and I will literally read every single highlight so that it gets captured here. And now, just like the Road Less Stupid, I can keyword search any phrase, any quote, any exercise that I'm looking for so that I can use it in coaching, training, or whatever. Okay. So these two things, as far as how I read books, have been immeasurably helpful to me. And another thing about podcasts is oftentimes, right, you might be reading, or riding in the car, you're in a place that you can't take notes. Well, I've really started to move away from podcasts that don't offer transcription. So my favorite one is Tim Ferriss. But like, for example, Tim transcribes all of his podcasts. When I listen to one that's really good, I have the transcription downloaded, and then I send it to a printing house that's 2 blocks from my house. And for about 15 bucks, I can get the podcast transcribed. And so I'll listen to it. And then I'm like, oh gosh, I need to remember that. I need to take notes. Well, then I send it to the print house. I get the physical version of it. Now I can come in and highlight that stuff out, or I can do it straight off of the site. I prefer this because I can highlight, make notes of it, all the things that I want to do so that I can, again, disseminate the information things. And it seems like it might take me forever to get through a book, but once you set up the systems, it's really not that hard. And when I have these Google Docs of every book and highlight that I've made, it allows me to have a research library, because the thing that I've figured out as a coach is that I've got to be the librarian, not the library. I can't physically know it all. But if I have a library that I'm able to access, it looks as though I have the ability to know it all. But it's just a very, very simple system.